Good night, this is Fumi Sleepy Time Stories. Tonight's bedtime story is about to begin. A long time ago, in the countryside, there lived a young couple. Behind their house was a small window through which they could see a beautiful garden filled with rare and exotic plants. However, the garden was surrounded by a tall fence, and no one dared to enter, for it belonged to a powerful witch. The witch's magic was formidable, and everyone in the land knew of her and feared her. One day, as the pregnant wife stood by the window gazing into the garden, she suddenly noticed a patch of lush, glistening lettuce growing in the soil. The leaves were so green and fresh that they made her mouth water. The moment she saw them, an intense craving took hold of her. As the days passed, her desire for the lettuce only grew stronger, but knowing she could never have it, she became pale and deeply distressed. Her husband was alarmed and asked, "My dear, what's wrong?" With a sigh, she replied, "Oh, I long for the lettuce in the garden behind our house. If I cannot have it, I will surely die." Because the husband deeply loved his wife, he thought to himself, rather than watching her suffer like this, why not fulfill her wish, even just a little? So, at dusk, he climbed over the fence, slipped into the witch's garden, and quickly pulled up a head of lettuce before hurrying back home. The moment his wife saw the lettuce, she immediately made it into a salad and devoured it ravenously. However, the lettuce salad did not satisfy her cravings. Instead, she urged her husband to get more for her. Wanting to fulfill his wife's request, the husband decided to sneak into the witch's garden once again. The next evening, at dusk, he carefully climbed over the fence once more, but as soon as he landed on the other side, he was startled because standing right in front of him was the witch herself. "You have some nerve," she said angrily. "How dare you sneak into my garden and steal my lettuce?" Terrified, the husband trembled as he pleaded, "Please, have mercy on me. I had no choice. My wife is pregnant, and she desperately craved your lettuce. She said she would die if she couldn't have it." The witch listened and then said, "If you are telling the truth, I will allow you to take as much lettuce as you want. But I have one condition. If your child is a girl, you must give her to me. If it is a boy, you may keep him." Fearing for his life, the husband had no choice but to agree to the witch's demand. A few months later, the wife gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. It was the witch. Ignoring the wife's desperate pleas, the witch heartlessly took the baby away. She said, "You were the ones who stole my lettuce and agreed to my terms. You cannot go back on your word now." With that, she carried the child away to her home. The witch named the baby Rapunzel. As Rapunzel grew, she became more and more beautiful. When she turned 12, the witch locked her away in a tall tower deep in the forest. The tower had neither stairs nor a door, only a small window at the very top. Whenever the witch wanted to enter, she would stand at the base of the tower and call out, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." Rapunzel had long golden hair, as fine as silk. Upon hearing the witch's call, she would lower her braids, allowing the witch to climb up into the tower. Years passed. One day, a prince from a neighboring kingdom was riding through the forest when he happened to pass by the tall tower. At that moment, he suddenly heard a beautiful singing voice from above. He couldn't help but stop and listen. Quietly, the one singing was Rapunzel. Whenever she was alone, she would sing, and her voice was incredibly enchanting. The prince wanted to find out who was singing, so he searched all around the tower for a door. But no matter how hard he looked, he couldn't find one. Left with no choice, he rode away. However, the song had deeply imprinted itself in his heart. He found himself unable to eat or sleep without hearing it again. So, from that day on, he rode into the forest every day just to listen. One day, as the prince once again arrived near the tower, he was determined to continue searching for an entrance. Just then, he saw the witch approaching, so he quickly hid behind a tree. He watched as the witch stood at the base of the tower and called out, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." At once, Rapunzel let down her long hair, and the witch climbed up. Seeing this, the prince thought, "If that is the only way in, then I can try it too." The next evening, he came to the tower and called out just as the witch had Rapunzel, "Rapunzel, let down your hair." At once, the long hair cascaded down, and the prince climbed up. When Rapunzel saw the prince, she froze in shock, for she had never seen anyone other than the witch before. The prince, keeping a respectful distance, bowed gracefully and introduced himself. He then began to recount how he had been captivated by her singing and how, over time, he had fallen in love with the voice's owner. Rapunzel's fear gradually turned into curiosity. So when the prince asked if she would marry him, she quickly agreed. She said, "I would love to go with you, but I don't know how to get down. Please bring me a piece of silk each time you visit. I will weave the silk into a ladder, and once it's finished, I will climb down and leave with you." Since the witch always visited during the day, they agreed that the prince would come every evening. The witch suspected nothing until one day Rapunzel asked her, "Mother, why do you feel so much heavier than the prince when I pull you up? He climbs up so quickly." "What? You disobedient child!" the witch screamed. "What are you saying? Why? Didn't you tell me that a man was climbing up?" Furious, she seized Rapunzel's beautiful braid and, with a few swift snips of her scissors, cut it off. Long ago, the witch had been betrayed by a man, and ever since, she had harbored a deep hatred for them. From the time Rapunzel was old enough to understand, she had drilled into her the importance of fearing and avoiding men without mercy. The witch cast Rapunzel into a desolate forest as punishment for her disobedience. Then she tied the severed braid to the window hook at the top of the tower, lying in wait for the prince's return. That evening, the prince arrived at the base of the tower and called out, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." The witch lowered the hair, allowing the prince to climb up. "Ha!" the witch sneered as soon as she saw him. "You've come to take your beloved away, haven't you? But the beautiful little bird will sing for you no more. The cat has hidden her away, and it will make sure you never see her again." The prince was struck with shock and despair. Before he could react, the witch shoved him from the tower. He plummeted into a thorn bush below. Though he suffered no fatal injuries, the sharp thorns pierced his eyes, blinding him. Now unable to see, the prince wandered slowly through the forest, lost and heartbroken. Day after day, he wept over the loss of his beloved. And so, the prince lived alone in the wilderness for many years, until one day, by chance, he arrived at the place where Rapunzel had been abandoned. Rapunzel had already given birth to a pair of twins, a boy and a girl. One day, the prince heard voices nearby. The sound was strangely familiar, so he followed it. As he moved forward, he stumbled over a rock and fell. Hearing the noise, Rapunzel turned around and immediately recognized him. She couldn't believe her eyes. Overwhelmed by a flood of emotions, she rushed toward him. Yet, above all, she felt the immense joy of being reunited with her lost love. She embraced the prince tightly, tears of happiness streaming down her face. As her tears fell onto the prince's eyelids, his vision was suddenly restored. With his wife and children by his side, he returned to his kingdom, where the people welcomed them with great joy, and at last they lived happily ever after.